recording. Perfect. All right, guys, thanks for coming. So today in RevUP, we're going to talk about the sales cycle and effective client communication. This is the fourth of the 12-week RevUP program. And again, if you've missed previous weeks, that's fine. You can catch up by watching the recordings, but they don't have to be watched in order. You know, they all work on their own as well. Nope, not that one. Okay, here we go. All right, so today we are going to cover the 7 steps in the sales cycle, objection handling techniques, effective communication in sales, utilizing the DISC or DISC assessment for your clients. And that takes up the whole second half of the meeting. That's all about finding out what type of client you're working with and how they like to communicate. So as always, we start out with an affirmation. So today's affirmation is, I love to set appointments and I love to make presentations. This affirmation is obviously important for today because it's all about setting the appointment and presenting to your clients. And this is something that I feel like the vast majority of real estate agents are not confident in their ability to do. Set the face, behind a computer, it's really easy to pretend like you're being busy. But the whole goal is to set the appointment and to make the presentation. That's something most of us have anxiety about. And so the point of this affirmation is to get past that anxiety and get excited for setting the appointments, because that should be our goal, which is what we're about to talk about. So let's talk about the 7 steps in the sales cycle. So picture this like a ladder. We start out down here and we work our way up, and it's one step at a time. If you think, one thing I train new agents to think is to, when I say, what is your goal when calling a cold lead? Your goal should not be to close the sale, right? Or to help them buy a home. That's not the goal of that phone call. That's ridiculous. It's literally impossible on that phone call to get them to buy a home, right? The goal of that phone call is to make an appointment. I say this all the time. Just focus on what is your goal. Your goal on that appointment is to make on that phone call is to make an appointment. And your goal after making an appointment is to qualify and understand the needs of that client and so on, right? So just make small steps that are all working towards the close of the transaction and the post-sale follow-up. So the 7 steps are prospect for the leads. So that's, again, what we talked about last week, right? That's getting leads in the door and calling them, right? And metaphorically in the door, I mean, getting leads to your phone and making the phone call, right? Prospecting. Step 2 is make the appointment, which again is the most important part. Don't be afraid about, it's not good enough to just talk to people on the phone. Try really hard to say, hey, let's meet at my office. Let's meet at this home that we're going to see, or let's meet for coffee. Getting the face-to-face. Once you have a face-to-face with someone, they feel bonded to you. And to a small extent, they feel appreciative and in debt to you because you've spent that time on them. You've invested that time.
Is Andrew trying to get in?
What was that?
Is Andrew trying to get into the meeting?
It doesn't show me if he is.
Okay, I'll send him an invite.
Okay. Step 3, qualify and need analysis. We'll go into more depth on all of these. Step 4 is loyalty commitment. Step 5 is meet the needs. Step 6 is close the transaction. And that really is the most important because that's what we do. And step 7 is post-sale follow-up. Okay, so talking about step 1, prospecting. This really goes into what we talked about last week. So if you didn't see week 3, I highly encourage you to take a deeper dive into prospecting by watching the week 3 video again. So it should go without saying, right? The sad truth is, though, a lot of us would-be real estate professionals avoid step 1 and wonder why they're failing. Remember, you are in the business of generating leads. No leads equals no business. As you move through different methods of generating leads, For now, please know that there are many different ways to generate them. What works for one person will not necessarily work for you. In the beginning, you must try them all and then choose, what are the types that work best for you. So some examples are open houses, sphere of influence, which again is what I try and hit home the most. That is the bread and butter. That's everyone's goal. That is your low hanging fruit, the first thing you want to focus on. You've got social media, for sale by owners, expired and canceled listings, relocation, farming, geographic and demographic, and then paid lead services like Zillow, Trulia, etc. So these are just some examples, and I'm sure you have some yourself. But step one, prospecting. Like I said, that goes without saying. So step two, as I've already talked about, is make the appointment. Real estate is a contact sport. That means you must get the face-to-face as soon as possible. Having said that, remember that your time is extremely valuable. By asking a few simple questions designed to pre-qualify your client, you will be able to make sure your prospect is ready to meet now. Often you'll find that meeting now is not wise for them or for you, but meeting later after certain events like cleaning up their credit, for example, is better for all involved. In these cases, you will launch a follow-up plan on your CRM, right? So if you have a client, just to kind of put this into a real life situation, I had a friend said, "Hey, I've got a friend who just started working at where my friend works, and I told him to call you because he wants to buy a home." So we had a phone call, and he was all jazzed to buy a home, and I just asked some very simple questions. For example, I said, "Oh, what'd you do before you just got this new job?" And he says, "Oh, I've been traveling for the past year and a half, and I haven't really had a job." So a lot of people don't know this, but you have to have at least 1 year of tax returns, a whole 12 months of tax return of consistent income. And most of the time, it's actually 24 months of consistent income that you can show on your taxes. So filed taxes from a full previous 12 months. So in reality, at a minimum, we're talking 13, 14, 15 months after getting a job before you can qualify for a loan. This is just, again, an example. But I was able to explain that to him and not just say, "Hey, call me in a year and a half." I obviously didn't do that, but I explained to him, so here's the problem. You have to have consistent income because they want to see that somebody is solid before they, as in banks, lending institutions, before they give a loan. So it was a good conversation. I put him in my CRM. I follow up with him consistently. I Facebook friended him. I followed him on Instagram. I'm going to stay in touch with him. I put reminders in my calendar to call him and text him, see how he's doing. I've invited him to a networking event that I host, just little things like that. So he's still going to be a future client, but there's no point in scheduling a coffee meeting with him that's going to take an hour and he's going to tell me how excited he is about buying a home. And he literally cannot buy a home right now unless he has somebody who wants to give him $300,000, right? And no bank is going to do that when you just got a job after not working for a year and a half. So that's just an example, because a lot of people might hear, well, don't set up the meeting until you pre-qualify them and think, well, that's lazy. You should always be willing to meet someone. Well, that's just an example. Like, try and get some simple things out of the way and make sure that they're somewhat viable before you waste your time. Okay, so here are some questions that you can ask up front. These are just some examples that they have. What is your time frame for buying a home, right? This is after you've pre-qualified them a little bit, right? You know that they've had a job for a year at least, and little pre-qualification like that. So ask them what their time frame is. Are you looking to buy in 30 days, the next 6 months, the next 12 months, or even longer? Like timing is super important, because you're going to treat someone a lot different if their lease expires in 45 days and they need to get into a home right now than you're going to treat someone who wants to buy a home next year, right? Do you have a home to sell first? If yes, is it currently on the market? Are you working with an agent, right? You wouldn't think that would be a question you have to ask, but sometimes people don't even think about that. Will you be paying cash or arranging financing? I just ask, have you spoken with a lender? Because 99% of people don't have cash to buy a home. And if they're, if you say, have you spoken with a lender, then they'll just say if they're cash. So I skip that part of the question, but I just ask, have you already spoken with a lender? And if not, you don't say talk to a lender. You say, I've got 3 lenders or 2 lenders, or probably at least 2 lenders who I can refer to you. Are you interested in me connecting you with them? And the reason that's really important is because now you've got a teammate. Because right now, beforehand, if Christy's my client, I'm trying to convince Christy to work with me. I'm trying to be a resource to her. But if I can get Craig Benson, who was on the call last week, a lender who I say, hey, Craig, this is Christy. She's looking to buy a home in the next 3 months. And now Craig and I are working together. And if I drop the ball and don't call her for a week, hopefully Craig does, right? So that's just an example of why you want to make the connection with the lender, so that you guys can work together on converting that lead. It's a free teammate. It doesn't cost you anything, right? If you teamed up with another agent, you'd get 50% of the commission. But in this case, if you get them in touch with your lender, you guys work together. Okay, so this talks about, in the notes, it talks about all first meetings should be at the office for safety. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, and you should do what you feel comfortable and safe doing. Realty One Group partners with, oh shoot, what's it called, Robin? The
Beverly Carter Foundation.
Beverly Carter Foundation, which is it's a really tragic story about a real estate agent who was robbed and killed. Because she went to a showing and the showing was fake. Essentially, they were just doing it to kidnap her and try and get a ransom. And it's a really tragic story. So her son started the Beverly Carter Foundation, which is all about keeping agents safe and educating them on how to stay safe. That's a whole office meeting to talk about. Follow your instincts, do what you feel safe. And if you're going somewhere, if you get a cold call from somebody who got your number and they say, hey, I really want to see this home that's on the market and it's down a dirt road, that's where you should really think twice. But going to the meeting meeting the first time at an office or at a coffee place, I've got no problem with at a coffee place, right? So do what feels right to you. And if you're not feeling safe, call me, call another agent, ask them to just come with you. We're happy to. And at a bare minimum, if you're going on a showing for the first time, text me, text your spouse, text your friend, and say, hey, I'm meeting someone for the first time at this home. I'm about to get out of my car. If I don't text you back in the 15 minutes, can you please call me? And tell them where you're at, right? Just little things like that. Just be safe, right? Also, if you have an iPhone, if you press the side button 3 times, oh, it didn't work. Is it the volume button 3 times, Robin?
It's the lower side of the volume button, I believe.
Okay, lower side of the volume button.
I haven't done it in a while, but.
Oh, maybe it changed on the recent update. There is something that you can do.
So there's a bunch of different apps that you can. There's a bunch of different apps. And also if you have an iPhone, there's that function as well. Like, I'm a night owl. You can totally like text me and say like, hey, I know it's, I don't know, 8:30 at night. I'm doing a flashlight showing. Would you be willing to check in with me in 15 minutes? Like, I don't have any problem calling you in 15 minutes. And like Isaac and I, we prioritize your safety over anything else. Like, if you've got the bad jimmies and you want to like, something feels wrong, just call us or get out. Like, we won't be mad. Like, we'll figure it out. I'll send out an email about agent safety and then send a few different tips and tricks, like apps you can download that'll track for you, or like the Birdie keychain that is like as loud as a fire alarm that you can have on your keychain if something goes wrong, stuff like that.
Yep. Anyways, we won't belabor it too much. It's really important, but at the same time, a lot of it's common sense. So just be smart. If you're meeting someone for the first time, be in a public place. And if you're not in a public place, be very careful. Just be cautious. All right, step 3, qualify the lead, and discuss what's important to them, right? What need analysis. So qualify means making sure that the odds of getting paid are in your favor. Face it, you work on a contingency. That means you do not make a dime until title changes hands. As such, you must be vigilant about with whom you work and when. In the buyer and seller modules, you will learn the process, questions, and dialogues to use that will fully qualify your prospect. Remember, you will need to re-qualify your prospect as you work together and things change. So this is all about finding out what's important to them, where do they want to live, what their price range is, which is all about qualifying them with the lender, right? Finding out exactly what they can afford. And if they can afford $400,000, do they really want a $400,000 home payment, or are they really looking for $350,000? This is all about finding that information. Step 4 is loyalty and commitment. I'm going to push back on this slide a little bit. They're not wrong. This whole portion is about saying, hey, to your clients, hey, I'm loyal to you. I'm going to work my butt off for you. And in return, I want you to sign a buyer's agency agreement. This isn't applicable with sellers because obviously we have a listing agreement. And so that has to be signed in order to list a home. But when you're working with a buyer, you can choose to represent a buyer without a buyer's agency agreement or with a buyer's agency agreement. So just a quick education on what that means is if you do not have a buyer's agency agreement with the buyer, then they can leave you at any time. If you do have a buyer's agency agreement and you show them a home and they decide they don't want to work with you and they write an offer on that home, you're still entitled to commission. So on the surface, that seems obvious, right? Well, of course I want a buyer's agency agreement. And if you can get one and you feel comfortable asking for it, that's great. The only problem with that is a lot of agents don't ask for that. And I use it as part of my script, if you will, when I'm talking to buyers. I say, I don't make you sign, this is just me, take it or leave it. But I say, I don't make you sign a buyer's agency agreement because I'm confident that there's no way you're going to want to go to any other broker. And if I suck, you can leave. You know, I don't get paid at all, right? I only get paid if you find a home and I do a good job for you. That's it. So I don't make people sign a buyer's agency agreement. And when I say this to buyers on an initial consultation, they appreciate it. They nod. They're like, wow, that's cool. And I say, and if any other broker, you're talking to any other broker at any time, never sign a buyer's agency agreement, right? Again, you can leave me if I'm not doing a good job, if I'm not returning your calls, if I'm not showing you homes when you want to see it, that's great. And you don't owe me anything, but don't sign a buyer's agency agreement. That's what I tell people. And again, I talk to 10 agents and 5 are going to say, always get one. 5 are going to say, you don't need one. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide beyond that because it really is a personal choice. But there's nothing wrong with asking for it. And if you feel confident getting it signed, then you absolutely should. Step 5 is meet the client's needs. So the most important component in meeting your client's needs is communication. According to yearly research conducted by the National Association of Realtors, the #1 complaint lodged by buyers and sellers is that they never hear from their listing agent and never know what is going on. Actually, just agent, not listing agent. How often should you communicate? Ask your client, make it your own personal policy to call your client before your client calls you. I love that. That's something that it's like just a personal game I play with myself. I think they're going to be calling me soon, asking what's going on. So I call them, right? And if they call me, say, hey, I want an update, I know that I didn't do a good job, right? That's just an easy metric to use. No news to relate. Well, call or text anyways. No news is the news, right? So saying, we talked about this last week, so I'm not going to belabor it too much, but commonly in a transaction, you have the inspection, and following the inspection, you wait 2-3 weeks for the appraisal. Those 2 to 3 weeks are dead. There's seriously nothing to talk about. Honestly, there's really nothing going on. That is the perfect example of a time that you know that there's nothing going on, but the buyer and seller, they do not know. They feel like they have been talking with you every single day, and now all of a sudden they haven't heard from you in 14 days and they feel like something's wrong. I really encourage you at least once a week, maybe even more, just a text and just say, hey, how are you doing? We're still waiting on the appraisal. If you have any questions, give me a call. I'll be in touch as soon as I hear more. Just in that every few days, a text very similar to that, or a phone call is even better. That will be something that's memorable to them. And perhaps more importantly, if you don't do that, that'll also be memorable. And your clients will remember, yeah, well, it was good. Everything was fine, but man, it was like really stressful because we had no idea what was going on and they didn't tell us that was normal, right? So not doing it isn't necessarily going to be as memorable as not doing it is going to be negatively memorable. Okay, that works.
Negatively.
Negatively. There it is. That sounds way better. Thanks, Robin. This is why you're paid the big bucks. Okay, step 6, close the transaction. It's funny because most people think like, hey, this is a whole reason you talk to buyers and sellers, and they think that's the one and only step. But this is the second to last step. So you see from the previous 5 that there's a lot to get here. But Obviously, this is the most important part. One of the main reasons people ask us to reduce our commission is because they do not understand how much work is really done, and we have not shown them our value. That is our own fault. We fear that our clients may choose not to work with us unless we reduce our commission. The opposite is true. What the public sees is a real estate professional driving around their luxury car, a real estate professional filling in blanks on a pre-printed form, real estate professionals putting lock boxes on the door, real estate professionals placing a sign in the yard, placing their home on the MLS, and then just collecting a big check, right? That's it. That's all they see. That's how they perceive what we do. So what we have to do is we have to remind them what we do, right? And show them what we do. And that's part of where communication is part of that too, where you're talking about, you're communicating to them the steps of the transaction and what you do that separates you from other agents. So so some suggestions are follow a checklist. If you don't have a checklist for a transaction checklist, we're going to get to that in, I think it's week 9, but it talks all about a transaction start to finish. We have checklists on that, but if you want that ahead of time, let us know. But have a checklist and make sure you're talking to your clients about the checklist, and you want to, again, be showing them your value. If you're busy, consider hiring a transaction coordinator. If you're not busy, you're good. You can handle that all yourself. But if you're really busy and you're not able to communicate with your clients because you have so much going on, you really should think about hiring a transaction coordinator. It's $300 out of a $10,000 commission. That's nothing, right? Yeah, that's about all I have to say on that one. Communication, again, communication is key. Last step, and oftentimes the most forgotten by agents, is the post-closing steps. This is another thing. I've got an actual spreadsheet that I follow. So as soon as it closes, I have my client at the top with their address, and I check off, did I get them a gift? Did I ask for if they have anybody else who is interested in real estate? And did I get a testimonial? That's so important. I should have a better CRM, but what I use is a program called HomeBot. So this is something that you can partner with a lender on, and it's like $20 a month. You don't have to use this, but HomeBot sends your clients. So after they close on a home, you put them into HomeBot, and it sends them market updates every week, showing them what the value of their home is according to the market. It's like a Zillow value, which as we know is not always accurate. In fact, it's almost always not accurate. But anyways, that's one program that I use, but you can also use your CRM, or you can literally just use a calendar. But the goal is to make sure you always get them a gift, always ask for a referral, always get a testimonial, and always follow up with them at least yearly, right? If nothing else, put them on your Christmas card list. All right, let's talk about effective client communication. Effective selling is not really selling. Effective selling is about building relationships and understanding human behavior, how we trust, how trust is lost, what motivates us, and how we make buying decisions. People do business with people. It is that simple. Think about your last major purchase. What did the salesperson do to help you through the decision-making process? And another way of looking at that, another good exercise to do, is think about the last time you bought a car, or I'm trying to think of an example, something else, a big purchase, and how did you pick the salesperson you worked with? The chances are you pick someone who you know and you trust and you have a relationship with. So that's just something to think about. And the people who, in my experience, when I have bought cars in the past, the people who I really did not want to buy a car from were the people who were selling, right? The people who were just running their mouth, not listening to me, and just felt like all they cared about was their commission, and they really showed it. Okay, the greatest sales lesson ever. That's a pretty bold statement. We are given one mouth, but 2 eyes and 2 ears. It is twice as important to listen and observe than to talk. This is so true. I feel like we can all relate to that, being around somebody who you feel like as you're talking, they're just waiting for for you to take a breath so that they can respond, and they're not really listening to you. That sucks. As salespeople, we really, your focus should be to listen to them and respond to exactly what they're saying. Don't be thinking about what you're saying next. Be really listening and caring about them, and they'll sense it. I mean, again, seriously, try and think back to people you love talking with, whether they're at, you know, events that you go to or family. Like, I'm sure you have people in your life who you absolutely love having conversations with. I bet you'll realize that it's not because of the stories they tell. It's because they really seem to care about you and they really seem to listen to you. So anyways, that's the whole point about this slide, is to ask questions about what they're saying and make them feel like you're listening, and obviously be listening, because that's the only way you'll do that. Investigate, validate, educate, close, in that order. So the objection you first hear is only a smokescreen. All objections are actually an expression of some sort of fear. The typical buyer fears losing money, losing face, and or losing control. Okay, so investigate and inquire. When communicating, and especially when handling objections, you use these 4 steps. Instant success won't occur overnight. However, with practice, you will notice incredible results with everyone you encounter. So step 1, investigate and inquire. This is the first and most vital step in the communication sequence. In most exchanges, you will move back and forth from investigation to validation and education, then back again. The goal step one is to learn what the true objection is. What do they want? What is their underlying concern or fear? If you find their fear, like what is the main thing that's bothering them, back to the earlier slide, what is the main thing that they're nervous about? Is it the money? Is it the commitment? And then you can handle that objection. If you're not focusing on what their real fear is and buying a home, then you're going to find yourself showing them 50 homes and then they decide to keep running, right? So find their fear and handle that fear before you go any further. Validation is not an agreement. When you validate someone, you are demonstrating that you listened and heard. Remember, their perspective is valid to them. They may be off the market, but before you can change their way of thinking, you must gain their trust. Picture the prospect holding up a shield. This is a metaphorical shield that protects them from you, the dreaded salesman. Imagine that they are barely peering over the shield at you. You must gain their trust and get them to lower the shield before you can make any headway. I feel like if you've been in real estate for any amount of time, you can relate to this, where you feel like you're just having a conversation with someone, but they are just like not interested. Andrew's done a lot of open houses recently. Andrew, I'm sure you've definitely had those people come through the open house and they're like, they want to see the home, but their shields are up. I notice that all the time at open houses. They're so nervous about being sold that they are just, they're so hesitant. So your goal is to not sell them a home, right? Your goal is to get them to lower the shield. Ask how they're doing. Ask what are they up to today, right? So this says we all are guilty of this. So anytime, if you've ever said, no, I'm just looking, in answer to, hey, may I help you find something? And that was you holding up your shield, right? So your job as a sales professional is to get the prospect to lower the shield. The key is trust. Build the trust and the shield comes down. What builds trust? Safety. When people feel safe, they bring down their shield and they'll share and speak their truth. Violate that trust by immediately jumping to the education or jumping to the sale, and the shield comes right back up. No trust, no closing, no sale. So here are some ways to validate people and show them that you're listening to them. You say things like, oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, I hear you. I felt that way too when I was in a similar situation. I probably would have had the same concern if I were in your shoes. Or I use this one a lot. Before I got into real estate, I felt the exact same way, right? So make them feel like you really understand them, and use personal examples. Do not jump to education. We're going to talk about education next, but don't jump right into education. People don't like having information shoved down their throat. So make sure they feel heard, they feel safe, and then, which is, again, that's the whole point of this slide is the validation, but validate them before you educate them. So last step is education. Again, do not jump immediately into educating your prospects. Timing is everything. If you have not gained their confidence, you will be perceived as merely talking at them and your words will fall on deaf ears. Also remember that the way you introduce education is critical. There are adults here. These are adults here. Treat them as such. If you treat them with respect, you'll win every time. So we've all been there where we're talking to somebody and we don't understand their business and they belittle you without even realizing it, talking over your head or thinking your questions are dumb. So that's the goal here, right? Be very sympathetic of the fact that they're not in real estate every day. So they don't know, there's so much that they don't know. So you want to educate them respectfully and don't make them feel like idiots. Okay. Closing. The last step, and unfortunately the most overlooked, is to ask for the sale. And this is so important. This is something that is really difficult for me, and I think for all salespeople. So we go through this whole step. We validate them. We hear what their concerns are. We educate them. And then you're at a listing appointment or you're talking to a buyer and you say, well, it was great meeting you. Give me a call when you have some time. That's horrible. That's the worst thing you can do because they're not going to call you. It's not, they're at that point, that is the best chance you have of getting them to commit to you. So that's what we're calling the close. So the last step is to say, do you have any other questions? No. Okay, perfect. So I'm really looking forward to working with you. Is there anything else I have to do to earn your business, right? Or however you want to say it, find out what works for you. But that is the part that is most of the time missed. I've also noticed this, sorry to relate it to me and kind of unrelated to you, but sales translate to all businesses. So as I recruit, obviously, as everyone knows, I recruit agents to join our brokerage. And so this is something I struggle with that I should get better at too. But when I'm meeting somebody at the office or at coffee and they're interested in joining our brokerage, I have to get better at, before we leave, just say, so are you ready to join the brokerage? And if they say no, don't push them, right? If you say, so are you ready? So I'm really excited to list your home. Can I send you the listing paperwork tonight? Or if you have the listing paperwork with you, are you ready to sign the listing paperwork? If they say no, you don't push them, but you got to ask it, because that is your best opportunity right there. And most of the time you'll see that people don't like saying no, right? People will most of the time say, if you've done a good job up to there, they're ready to give you their business. So. Oops. Okay. The second half of the meeting, so we're halfway done right now. The second half of the meeting is covering, is learning about your personality type and learning about your client's personality type. So if you have a piece of paper or if you have the printout of RevUP week 4, you'll see this metric here. We got, are you a formal person, informal? Are you structured, or you just go with the flow? Okay. So here's the exercise we're going to do. I want you to, if you're not doing this on paper, that's fine, but just mentally decide where you are on the structured to just go with the flow metric, and where you are on the formal to informal in regards to relationship metric. So mark where you are on this, and you can't be in the middle. Okay, that's the only rule. So you're either struck on this side. You can be a little more go with the flow, but you're either on this side or on this side. And then same with this, okay? And you don't need to share. I'm not going to ask you to share, so it'll be private. This is good for you to know. Okay, so this is kind of an idea of, if you are on this side and this side, you're more of a controller, the director. If you're on this side and this side, you're the promoter, the socializer. And if you're on this side and this side, the supporter, the relator, and top right is the analyzer and the thinker. This is good for you guys to do about yourself, but then the second portion is start to think about your clients and start to analyze your clients, and start to try and find out, without directly asking them, obviously, but find out what type of people they are. And we're going to get into why that is so important. So it says, for example, if you're a director and you are working with an analyzer, you have to provide the data and the facts they want before they will make a decision to buy. It is essential to find out what those facts questions are in the pre-qualifying interview. So the DISC assessment is another great way of figuring out the type of person you are. DISC is a free assessment that you can take online. It stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. So we all have a little bit of all four of those. I've never seen anybody who has zero of any of those. But if you take the DISC assessment online, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. We did this, gosh, what was it, Robin? Like a year ago.
I actually put your and my DISC assessment, and Andrew's for that matter, in Slack. So you can share your screen and open yours up if you want. And then for Christy and Anna, I also put in the chat, I put the link on so you all can take your individual DISC assessments as well.
And we'll share that. If you are watching this video later and you would like a copy of, or you would like to know where to take that, let us know. Slack is taking a second, but yeah, I think that'd be good to show people that really quick.
You should compare yours and mine versus Andrew's.
There we go.
All three of us are so different, you guys. It's hilarious. Like, we're all successful, but it's just funny how we get, like, we all take very different paths to success for sure.
Oh, I'm struggling pulling it up on the screen. Give me just 1 second.
That is a spooky island.
That is spooky. It just came with the update. Okay, here we go. It's like okay. So this is my personality type. Majority of the majority is the I, followed by the D, followed by the S, followed by the C, and then it takes you through what this means about you. And it's crazy how accurate it is. So it took me, what, Robin, like 30 minutes? And no, I think it was even less. And it just asks you questions like, hey, if
we made him take it twice.
What was that?
We made Isaac take it twice because the first time he didn't go off instinct. He was super overthinking it. And then we got his results and we were like, no, we don't think that's right. So Andrew and I asked him to retake it.
You guys told me, they thought I was like totally lying. I was like, no, I went with like, I think, you know what I think it is? I think it's because I am a high I and I'm very like, I don't know.
A people pleaser by nature.
People pleaser. So I think gregarious, that's something my mom calls me. That's, yeah. See, it actually makes sense that an I would try and like come up with the answers that they think other people want. And so that actually makes sense. Wow, this is like showing my dirty laundry. We're gonna move past this, but anyways, we will get back to the presentation.
The DISC assessment, you guys, it's something that's fun. It's not super based in science. I give it. It is a personality test, right? So you can't be right, you can't be wrong. It's just interesting because if you know what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, then you know sometimes where you might need to pick up the slack a little bit and where you might need to release some of that control.
And the last thing I'll say on the DISC assessment is that it's been really helpful for me. Again, the main portion of what I do is I recruit. Right. And I not just recruit, but I also re-recruit all of our agents in the sense I try to retain you guys. I want you to stick with Realty One Group. And when I took the DISC assessment, I was like, well, this is really interesting to see like to see how we can kind of fall in these 4 different buckets. And I've started like becoming, I would say, pretty decent at sensing where people fall in those four buckets, which helps me know this is what we're really about to conclude the meeting by talking about, but it helps me know how to communicate with them, which we'll go kind of right into that. So each of us prefers to learn and communicate in one of 3 ways, or a combination of both. However, we all have one that dominates our learning and communicating style. Which one most closely describes you? So again, I encourage you guys as we go through these next slides, take notes and think about where you fall. Like you're probably going to be dominant at one, then there's going to be a second, and then there's going to be a third that you don't really relate to. Write that down for yourself, and then that will kind of be an exercise that will help you start to look at how your clients think, and we're going to get into why that's so important. So a visual person, jump right into that. They need to see it. They speak rapidly, thinks others are slow or stupid, shares first, sees that you are there. So this is just an example of how you might want to talk to somebody who is more of a visual learner. There's a home that I'm sure you would like to see. This home is a beautiful is in a beautiful neighborhood and is very picturesque. Even the doorbell has a unique design. You'll certainly see for yourself that the rooms appear large and have the right colors. If you go to the balcony, you can see some really nice scenery. I'm sure you'll see this is an excellent choice. That's kind of a dramatic example, but you get the point. The point is you see that somebody is a visual type of person, right? They get to a home and it's hard to describe, but I'm picturing clients who I've worked with who it's all about the visual, right? And so you want to work off of that, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that they feel understood. Okay. So an auditory person needs to hear it, will cock their head and tap fingers or foot. I definitely do that. Speaks at a moderate pace. I don't do that though. Shares second and wants to be heard. So this is an idea of how you talk to someone about a home who's an auditory person. Yet there's another home that I'm sure you would like to hear about. The home is in a quiet neighborhood and is of very sound construction. Is that a pun? That seems like a pun. Even the doorbell has a nice tone. You'll certainly say to yourself that the rooms are large and have the right tones. Okay, this is full of puns. This is something I would have written. If you go to the balcony, you can hear the birds chirping and the sound of the breeze. I'm sure you'll tell yourself that this is an excellent choice. That, again, a little dramatic, but I think the point of this is they're being dramatic with the examples to make you think this way, right? To be talking to them about, oh, it's wonderful because you're not near a busy road, you're actually near a green belt and you can hear the frogs in the pond and it's, whatever, but you're trying to work off of what they appreciate and focus on that. And lastly, you've got the kinesthetic, the touch people. So these people need to touch it, they need to feel it, they work with their hands, they speak more slowly, thinks others are too fast and quick, shares last, wants to feel connected. This is for me definitely my least relatable, but and it's also for me, confession, hardest for me to work with clients like this. It happens, right? Where you work with someone and I'm just picturing, and I'm sure you know people who are like this, and you'll find that the ones that this is the reason for writing these down, like what you relate with most, second most, and third most, because it kind of shows you where you have maybe a blind spot or a weakness, and then you can work on it a little more. So you might say to these type of people, there's one more home that I'm sure you will find satisfying. The third home is in a warm neighborhood and is very solidly built. Even the doorbell gives a welcome feeling. You certainly sense the rooms are spacious and have the touch. If you go to the balcony, you can feel the warm sun and the light breeze. I'm sure you'll feel that this is an excellent choice. Again, being overly dramatic to make a point. That's you want to focus on what your clients care about and what type of person they are.
So,
all right, guys.
Isaac?
Yes, go for it.
So, you guys, something that I find effective is trying to just cover all of those bases. So, for example, Craig has that luxury listing, and so I helped make feature cards and then like a couple different signage things throughout the house that are like our favorite part of living here, our favorite part. And in those areas, I used a lot of those touch, hear, sound, feel, smell words. So we talked about watching the boats come and go at sunset and hearing the neighbors play outside, and just like little things like that sort of cement people in home. Like you can't really discount any of the senses. I think you're most effective when you use all of them Obviously not as dramatically as those examples,
Yeah.
but
Well, and that's a good point, for like a listing, right? Because when you're marketing a listing, you want to market to everybody who would be interested in that listing. And you can't, you're going to see people on all different fronts who are interested in that listing. So absolutely. But I think in this case, what they're talking about is when you're working with a client, be a good salesman is a chameleon, right? They make their client feel like you really understand them. And so the idea is show them that you understand what type of person they are by communicating in a way that they appreciate it. So I think that this was more Robin talking about like an individual, like when you're working with an individual, change your sales tactic to meet the needs and the style of that individual. But you're absolutely right. Of course, when it comes to a listing and marketing, you don't want to put yourself in one bucket because that eliminates the others. So as always, we conclude our meeting with talking about the one habit. So the one habit is something that everyone should implement for every day that they're going to commit to working. Again, if you're committing to 3 days a week, that's totally fine. But try and follow the one habit. And if you'd like, change it, adjust it to you. If you think you can do more calls or more handwritten notes or whatever, adjust it to you. But the one habit is you're going to make a minimum of 3 calls per day. You're going to add a minimum of 3 people to your database, which doesn't necessarily mean your CRM. It can also mean you're going to friend 3 people who you've met on Facebook, anything like that. And then you're going to do 6 handwritten notes or emails or texts, which is, in order, probably least, but so six touches to people as well. And that is the one habit. So thank you everybody for joining. This was fun. And if you have any questions about any of this, feel free to reach out. Robin, anything to add?
No, thank you guys for coming. I'll send the recap email and I'll put the link for the DISC assessment in there. And then if there's anything else you need, just give me a holler, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Right,
Thanks for coming, guys.
Okay, bye. I'm speeding.
All right, don't speed.
All right, bye, guys.